Welcome to Subaru Ecu Flash Training Part 19. In this training tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at working with our idle control tuning. Our idle control is where we command the ECU to try to run at a particular idle speed. That might be at 1200 RPM, that might be at 900 RPM, based on the coolant temperature or the engine's temperature as it's warming up. We'll have various different targets that we're going to be working with. Now, the idle control is going to be integrating with an idle control motor, allowing more or less airflow into the engine, also integrating itself with the spark timing feedback that's going to be influencing what the engine's torque production is going to be. So whether it's airflow or spark timing based, we're essentially going to be mapping out and trying to influence what the engine's torque is doing at idle to reach a desired idle speed. We're going to break down how this works and how to go and calibrate and tune this if you need to do so within your tuning techniques, whether in a Carberry or a stock-based Subaru ROM file. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our idle control tuning in our Subaru 16-bit applications. Idle control is something we definitely want to make sure is right. When we're cold, we want the engine to idle at a particular amount of idle speed, and when we're warm, we're going to be changing that desired idle speed. So we need to make sure everything is in order so that the ECU is controlling the engine as we'd expect. Now we're going to be digging into the general idea of idle control and what we're trying to accomplish here in the beginning of the video. We're going to then move into taking a look at a stock equivalent ROM file from Subaru in terms of the idle control and programming, and moving into a Carberry ROM because there's a lot more tables, a lot more things to adjust, a lot more control capability within the Carberry base compared to a stock Subaru equivalent ROM file. Then we'll move into ROM Raider, we'll do some data logging, take a look at some live data capture, then move into Megalog Viewer to review the data and evaluate how the idle control system is performing and if we need to make any adjustments or changes. So we'll have the whole picture here of working with our idle control. Now the first thing I want to do here is actually talk about the idea of what we're trying to accomplish with idle control in general. So this is going to be for any petrol-based engine. When we're dealing with ECU-controlled idle, in this case in our Subaru 16-bit application, we're going to try to manipulate the engine's torque output to achieve a certain desired idle RPM. So we can do that in two different ways. The first way is we can manipulate the airflow that's coming into the engine. If we put more air into the engine, we'll produce more torque. If we have less air into the engine, we'll have less torque. So if we're trying to regulate the engine at a particular amount of idle speed that we like to operate at, we're going to be adjusting airflow as one potential way we can regulate the torque to be able to achieve that desired idle speed. The other way that we can achieve a certain level of torque output from a particular engine is going to be spark timing. If we increase our spark timing, that'll increase the cylinder pressure and therefore increase the torque production. If we reduce the spark timing, it'll have the opposite effect by decreasing the cylinder pressure and decreasing the torque production. So as a result, we can use airflow or spark timing as a means for the torque output adjustment to an engine at idle. Now, there are some rules to this and some things that you definitely want to understand. When we're dealing with airflow adjustments, airflow will have more of a coarse adjustment on the engine's torque production compared to spark timing adjustment. Spark timing is going to have a more fine, gradual control over the torque production compared to airflow. In general, we want to have a certain amount of airflow coming into the engine to get the idle torque to where we want to be at, and we don't want to change that airflow. We want to use the spark timing then as our fine-tuning adjustment to get the desired idle speed and torque in line to achieve the desired idle speed. So we're going to be using the spark timing as our fine adjustment and the airflow as our coarse adjustment. Now the Subaru ECU can do either in this situation, and in fact we're going to be fitting our engine with an idle control valve that's going to allow a certain amount of airflow to bypass the throttle plate in a controlled manner. Then the spark timing can be varied from a base spark timing amount that's specific to idle. It can start to adjust from that point to be able to fine tune that engine's torque production to again reach a desired idle speed. So this is going to be how the Subaru ECU works, and we're going to find that most all other petrol-based engines are going to be controlled in the same manner. Now newer Subaru ECUs will be controlling drive-by-wire throttle body movement to be able to achieve a certain level of airflow coming into the engine. These older engines use an idle control motor, so it's going to be a little bit more of an old school technology. The concept is still going to be pretty much the same in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. It's going to be going about it in slightly different manners. Let's actually now that we understand what we're doing here, either controlling spark timing or airflow to achieve a certain level of torque, to achieve a certain desired idle speed. Let's talk about now moving into looking at a stock ROM file of what we need to program and what we need to work with as far as our programming goes, as far as our tables goes. The stock ROM files are extremely stripped down in terms of idle control. There is a lot more going on in terms of idle adjustments and tables that we need to go into, but we'll find that probably 95% of Subaru applications don't need to access the tables. So what we're finding here stripped down in a stock equivalent ROM file is going to be all we really need for most mile applications that are running stock camshafts. The times that you get into going and digging into the idle control pretty heavily are going to be an engine that's fitted with very large aggressive camshafts. Big camshafts start to lose a lot of low end torque, specifically at idle. In order to gain that back, we have to start to introduce more airflow or more timing or combination of both in order to have the engine idle at a particular amount of desired idle speed. We'll talk about how to go about dealing with that when we move into the Carberry ROM, because most likely, if you have a built engine with aggressive camshafts, you'll be dealing with the Carberry-based ROM. There'll be a lot more adjustments and things that we can make up that torque loss with that larger camshaft. But let's move down to our stock file, and let's take a look at the key areas and tables that we need to focus on. So if we're taking a look here under our 2003 WRX stock equivalent file provided in the training course. If we go into our current ROM metadata and we move down in here, we have an idle control area. It's gonna be
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.